about this. We create community, use challenge as the catalyst.
The trust breeds magic.
We're going to connect on the same level.
Possibility is bigger than they imagine.
Like any experiment, the reason you do it is to learn.
Who would you be without opportunity?
The learnings of this experiment are going to be on the edge of what's possible.
Everybody!
I can do this, and it's worth doing.
This became a love for us, this place.
Testing. All right, so I'm just going to take a step off because I want to actually create the environment in which I feel very welcome, and that is one. It's what we start our programs with, and it's our Stoked clap. So I'm just going to walk off stage, and I'm going to have you guys clap, and Lily is going to count off, and on 3 you're going to yell Stoked. It also makes for good video too. Okay. It's actually 1, 2, 3.
Stoked!
1, 2, 3.
Stoked!
1, 2, 3.
Stoked!
Thank you very much. Great. So I'm really honored to be here. I was here 2 years ago, and I guess my only advice for everybody that this is their first time here, just like soak up everything. And as Duke said, I've created my own little posse, and they happen to be in the Boston area. And I love his mother. She's like a mentor to me. And so I'm gonna do something different. I've been very, very fortunate enough to tell my story off the work that I've been doing for the past 8 years. And I've been very, very fortunate. So I'm going to do 2 things. One, I'm going to tell you the reason why I do it, and I haven't really done that. And the other thing is I'm wearing Tom's shoes, and I don't really wear Tom's shoes. So I thank you for the Tom's shoes, and I'm only wearing them because you guys gave them to me. So, so I'm going to, So I'm just going to talk a little bit about opportunity. So who am I? I'm Steve Larosiliere, and I would have to say first I'm a child of immigrants. My family came here in the 70s from Haiti, like all immigrants, for a better life. I was always raised to believe that that Haitian culture, like we weren't black, we were Haitian. You know, obviously I'm black, I'm African American, but I was always believed that we were a little different. And so what that did at a very early age was the struggles of African Americans like didn't really like bounce off me. I was like, I'm different, I'm Haitian. We had a very strong sense of pride and culture, the first, colony in the Western Hemisphere to gain their independence. So I had a lot of pride, and my last name is Larosiliere, and every Larosiliere in the world that you'll ever meet is related to me. And I'm very, very proud to be Haitian. And so, I had a lot of opportunity. So it's an opportunity to speak here. I've always been, and I'm sure you may not be aware of it right now, but I've always been that one black guy. I'm that one black guy here. I was that one black guy at your high school. I was that one black guy at your elementary school, on the soccer team, on the Little League. And with that came with a lot of responsibility. Because even though I said that I was, I'm Haitian, I always thought of myself different. To the outside world, I was just like, a black guy. And so I lived within 2 worlds. I lived world of like Haitian culture, well, 3 worlds. Haitian culture, which is full of music and life and spiritualism and voodoo and all of that sort of stuff. And then I also lived in the African American world, where I was perceived on the outside. I was like, oh, you're a black guy. And then I also sort of blended in with people that were very different than me. And so I was, trilingual. And so I was very, very fortunate to be, I'm a big fan of the Malcolm Gladwell book, Outliers, because I kind of, it took me a long time to realize that I am pretty much an outlier. And so with that came a lot of responsibility. And my mother really shaped who I am today. And I had a really great upbringing. It wasn't without its struggles, but I was able to, play soccer and have piano lessons and play lots of baseball. And, I did things, and I went and visited family in Canada. And all that kind of changed in the 80s. And I was born in Brooklyn and raised in Queens. And in the 80s, the crack was really bad. And I just remember, my neighbors, my friends' brothers, they would come and knock on my door and ask my family for money to do drugs. My friends started doing drugs or selling drugs, and their brothers, and it just this very safe neighborhood that I lived in was just it just turned. And crack was a really bad time. And my family got up and left and moved to Florida because they wanted a better life. And that's kind of where I sort of picked up skateboarding, and I love skateboarding, and I loved, my first board was a Vision Mark Gonzalez, and we rip off plywood and make our own ramps, and I'd found a Burton snowboards catalog, and I just looked at it and I just dreamed. And but also during that time, it was my father couldn't find work, and we were I'm gonna do it. We were poor, and it was really, really tough. It's kind of the first time I've ever said it. It's my mom had to leave Florida so that she could find work. My mom was, like I said, she was a hustler, and so she was able to make things happen. So she took care of, older Jewish ladies, and, she picked up a couple skills, became a phlebotomist and nurse's aide, and she did what she needed to do. And me and my sister were living in Florida with my dad, and he maxed out his credit cards and had bill collectors calling. And he was a smart man, he just didn't have that sort of drive to do it and to provide. But I saw that in my mother. So even though that we were we eventually left Florida and moved back in, lived in a basement, and you lived in this very comfortable existence, and then you feel man, I'm not really whole. My family's struggling, people started buying us groceries. But then my mom had this really strong sense of faith, and I remember she didn't have money to send us to to a good school because the high schools in the neighborhood weren't that good, the middle schools. So she put us in this Catholic school, and they just let her pay whatever she wanted to pay. And it was time to go to high school. And all of you guys know that where you go to high school helps determine where you end up. So my mom did a lot of praying, a lot of praying. And this guy named George Donahue, a man that I never met in Manhasset, Long Island, I guess he was a successful businessman, decided to give a young, promising black gentleman boy a chance to go to good school. So I was that one black kid at this prep school on Long Island, and I hated it. For a kid that was essentially poor, I never told anybody that I had a scholarship to go to that school. When all the kids were getting dropped off in their BMWs and their Mercedes, I was kind of ducking out and hiding and taking the public bus, And that kind of did a lot. But at the same time, I kind of go back to the opportunity because I look at all of my friends and what my friends back home, and I was very rich with sort of love at home. At least my parents were still married, that's the very least I could say. At least my parents were still together. It wasn't perfect, but at least they were together. and I had this sort of wealth of relationships that I was able to build in high school, and it really set me up for where I was eventually ended up going. So after graduating from high school, I went to college, and you know, I'm not even going to mention the first college I went to because it was, you know, a really expensive liberal arts school, and I shouldn't have gone there. I should have played at my level and went to a state school from the start. And I went there, and I realized that it's not what you do while you are in school, it's what you do while you're outside of school. And I think that's kind of the trap that I think a lot of sort of young, you know, people of color and lower socioeconomic status kids, they sort of fall into this trap of thinking they need to play on this level that is not theirs, when they really need to do is just figure out what their lane is and just kind of work with it. And so for me, you know, growing up Haitian, it's like, you're gonna get a good job, you're gonna be a doctor, you're gonna be a lawyer, and I just knew that sitting in biology classes wasn't for me. And I had to play to my strengths. So eventually just getting through college and just figuring out like what was true to my core and meeting people and getting ideas. I was able to sort of create this little path for myself. And I mean, fast forward a couple of years, I remember sitting down talking to a mentor, and I fell in love with the idea of mentoring. And I think it was really this sort of intention that I set for myself, and she said, what do you want most out of life? And I sat back and I thought, I was like, I want a network of creative people that want more out of life. That's the first thing I said. I want a community of people that don't play on this level. I want people that play on this level. We expect the best. And how I ended up getting there was by connecting to my truth. And how I did that was, like any good stories, you end up on the floor in your living room crying. And you're like, if I had anything in the world to do right now, what would I do? And the first thing was, I was like, I'm gonna buy a ticket, I'm gonna go to Vancouver, and I'm gonna go snowboarding. So you see, that first, when I started talking about the Burton Snowboard Cal, it was always a dream of mine to go snowboarding. It wasn't real. And I was in a position in my life in which I could do it. Like I had made certain things. So all these things I'm sort of leaving out, but that's not really that important. I could tell to you afterwards. And so for me, it was more about like, I had the opportunity in this space to breathe. And I feel like I would never have had that opportunity had I not seen people do it. Side note, studies have shown that it is more beneficial to take a low-income person and put them in a high-income neighborhood, right, to go to school, than it is to pump more money into a low-income school and provide more after-school programs and better teachers. And so that's the opportunity. And so after I did that and I came up with the idea to start Stoked, and Stoked is my organization that takes inner city kids and we help transform their lives to go snowboarding, skateboarding, and surfing, and mentoring. And one of the things that I found was that, you know, in the past couple of years, you know, figuring out like, why am I doing it? Why? And the sort of big thing is this thing called the opportunity gap. Has anybody heard of the opportunity gap? Can I get a show of hands? So David Brooks came out with this article last year or the year before, and it was just really this pivotal moment in my life where I felt like everything that I was doing at the time sort of clicked. And then in the past 6 to 8 months, I've been on this tear of finding every bit of information and research to back this claim, because I knew that like the soccer and the baseball and the piano classes that I did growing up brought out these natural gifts that I could be myself, I could be successful, and I have to rely on what the traditional path of what people say dictate success is. And so for me, there's the problem is, there's three problems: is the relationship gap, skills gap, and the participation gap. And so relationship gap is that there's 5 million kids that have mentors, 18 million need. There's really high youth unemployment. It's globally, that's a problem. It's because our schools are not connecting to the skills kids need to be successful. And the last stat is probably really, really, really important. And so this kind of goes back to what I was, my earlier point. In the past 30 years, middle-class families spent 3 times more on enrichment than low-income families. So what does that mean? All of the things that we did on the summer and on the weekends, they count. You look at the past 30 years, that's also when the widening income gap has happened. We all know that it's important, but how come the rest of the world doesn't? And so the reason why we use action sports is 3 things. So that one is, 3 things from a youth development standpoint. So, and the opportunity gap for definition is the difference in life trajectory between a middle class and a low income youth. And I had a lot of opportunity. And it's the reason why I feel really focused and passionate right now about closing that gap for those child of immigrants and low-income kids in order for them to be successful. And so on the youth development side, action sports provides resilience, self-reliance, and community. And on the sort of the skills side, what kids need to be successful is critical thinking, collaboration, and communication. And everything that you see here is just like, it's a hobbled up sort of hypothesis based off of every little thing has been backed by research. And there's another body of research. The results that you need in order to close the opportunity gap are human capital, social capital, and financial capital. We can't do anything about financial capital right now, but it's all about enrichment. And so I'm going to show you one of the things around why action sports. So there's a guy named Jaws. So you have the resilience right here, just like, if anybody knows Jaws, like he goes really, really big. So he falls, you get back up. You fall, you get back up, right? No matter how much you fall, you always know to get back up. And you're always more accountable and resilient. And then you land it, you stick it. And look at your community. Your community is so excited. Look how happy he is. You would have thought he won the World Cup, right? And that's, so that particular sort of, that thing is what I'm looking to encapsulate and put it into a bottle, market it, and give it to every single low-income youth and kids that are lacking in enrichment in this country, right? And so the reason how we do this, and so we first started and we were just like this one-on-one mentoring program. We went to after-school programs, and so we changed our model, and so now we're looking to add another layer. So there's like the things that you do at school, then there's the things that you do after school, right? And those things that you do after school, there's 2 tracks. You could go the sort of straight SAT prep route, or you can go towards this rich life and existence of like living, breathing, falling down, getting back up, connecting to adults, and to be able to and to work on projects that mean something, that are relevant, that create relationships, and that are rigorous. And so some of the outcomes are, kids feel more connected to school, they learn better, they exhibit better persistence, and this is all sort of backed by, independent studies and research. And so some of our impact is, I'm really proud of the fact that 100% of our kids that go through our program for more than a year, 100% of them graduate from high school. We provide 32% more enrichment and education for our kids. It's really a numbers game, right? Like how many skills, how many relationships, and how much hours of enrichment can we enrich the lives of these kids? Like these kids are all low-income kids, just like me growing up. I want to give them a middle class, or if not an upper middle class enrichment lifestyle after school and during the summer. We increase their attendance and we retain them. And every year our kids get to meet 10 very successful adults. And so how that looks is there's this woman, this young girl, Alexandra. Alexandra I've known her since she was 15. When I looked at David, and I looked at him, and he makes me think of our kids, and because he would have, when he first went to juvenile hall, he would have been in my program, right? And so and they're the same age. And so I've known her, and I remember her sitting in the classroom where I was talking, and she was like, yeah, I don't really know what I want to do. And just backstory is she single parent, Dominican background. She's actually half Haitian, just like me, and she lacking direction. Her peers, sex and drugs and like not really achieving in life. And then we put her on a snowboard. We matched her up with a mentor. She learned how to fall and get back up. She learned how to take deep breaths and look big and vast into the world while she was on the chairlift. She learned how to drop into a wave, ride that wave, and have 30 successful people and a community of people that really loved her. And she actually believed that she can do it, right? And then what that eventually did was, like, she joined other programs. She took full advantage of what she was able to do. Right here, she's in Ghana. She had volunteered at 15 at an orphanage, right? And this girl, she wanted to get a job. So what happened? One of our mentors was a VP of marketing at Foot Locker. I walked her resume over to the VP of marketing, right? Because you know that's how things work. Who are we kidding? Right? So we did that. She kept that job all throughout high school, all throughout college. It was only until her senior year of college where she said, where I said, you know what, I think you need to have some other skills. Why don't you work in the office? So she interned at the office. I gave her the keys. She has the keys to she has the email password. She helped me with an 18-month audit. Like, she was able to work apply the things that she had learned in Stoked and apply it to her life. She went to University of Rochester. And then this past May, this is her. She's our first 4-year college graduate. And when I think of her, it makes me really happy. It makes me really proud because she's like my co-conspirator. Like, it's like we were hustling on the side by the time since she was 15 years old, right? And when I think about like how to grow that, like I want more of that, right? So best part about it is I was ready to offer a job, right? And I said, but you know what? You should really look for other things. She had a mentor who moved to Ohio. She started to apply to jobs in Ohio. She used me as a reference, and I told the woman, if you don't hire this girl, I'm gonna hire her. And so she graduated on a Thursday. She moved to Ohio on a Sunday. She worked at her first job on Monday. And so can you imagine her in her interview? I know this person, I know this person, I know this person, I know this, I've done this. And that's what we should be doing. This girl she was from the projects in Brooklyn, in Bushwick, and like, you know, high school graduation rates in a community are not high, you know? And so that's kind of what we are looking to do. And so how we're looking to do this, and it's 3 things: human capital, social capital, and enrichment. And that's, I started to apply that to my own life. Like, what are my own opportunity gaps, right? And so how we do that are, we started this project last year. So we realized that our kids are so talented because like they know how to problem solve. They never give up. They're creative and they want to think and dream big. So last year we partnered with Pepsi to have 10 kids create a Mountain Dew commercial starring Lil Wayne. And so everything that you see here.
Why start rapping in high school when you can start in elementary school? Why make 1 platinum album when you can make 5? Why stop at rapping when you can skate 2? Why be anyone else when I can do me? I'm Lil Wayne, and this is how I do it. Why do it alone when I got the do nation?
So everything, the idea, the concept, the lighting, what he was wearing, we worked for 2 months. We flew down, we did it, And it was just like, at that moment, I was like, oh my God, our kids aren't like the kids that like, they don't need our help. We need to get out of their way. Yeah. We need to empower them, put the level really, really high, and say, go ahead and do it. And that's ultimately my goal, is to be able to just pump these kids up with enough skills, motivation, confidence, and to be able to just show them the door, and then have them look at us, look at me, and say, I'm gonna do it. And I was like, I know you can do it. You were born to do this. And then to be able to do it. And that would, you know, when I think about doing that, like, if not hundreds, and we've worked with thousands of kids, but like not hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands, there's a lot of hungry young talent out there. And I realized that, like, yeah, I wish I was a Stoked kid, because you know, what we're doing is helping to level the playing field. And, you know, like, you know, David, he was like, you want to give these entrepreneurs an unfair advantage? Like, I don't care. I want to give all of our kids every advantage as possible. You know why? You know who they're competing with? They're competing against the kids that you know in your neighborhoods, right? And I need to give them as much confidence to walk into a room and say, you know what, I don't have the money to go to Harvard or this expensive liberal arts school, but you know what, I went to state school, city college, or I know enough people, I'm confident and strong enough in myself, and I know enough people so that I can get the job done. Because growing up as a young person without that, you know, it's like, it could be very debilitating. And so that's what I'm looking to do. I also started this thing called the Stoked Igniters, and there are a few Stoked Igniters in the room. Thank you so much. So basically, I'm looking to build a coalition of people that want to help close the opportunity gap. They donate, you know, monthly to Stoked, and there's a bunch of perks and a bunch of events. And so we have Stoked Igniters across the country, and that we're kind of slowly building up this coalition, because we see a moment to close the opportunity gap. And then lastly is just enrichment. We want to connect with young people and connect with adults and communities that really feel that, like, who would you be without opportunity? Where would you be without the chance that you first got to be in a position of where you are right now? Like, how about doing that 1,000,000 times over? How about doing little things every single day to create opportunities for others? So whether it's forwarding that email, or whether it is, you know, thinking big and dreaming big for your life and then sharing it, because you never know how your story can affect others. And so that young kid, he was actually going to be my due fellow, but he's starting his first week. The first kid is at UC Berkeley, and he's another great example. We found that, ironically enough, like a large percentage of our kids end up getting passports, because they've learned that the risk that it takes in order to do something different, they want to keep doing it. So he spent a year in Turkey, and on his way back to JFK, he slept at my house, and he got a full ride. He was bad in school. He turned his deal around and is going to UC Berkeley down the road. And so anyway, I'm very glad. I'm really sorry that I've been holding out on you for the past 2 days, because I wanted to share my story. Now I'm free to talk. So. I should also say one thing, is my last thing. There's a quote that I sort of live by, and it's from Jay-Z, and it's 9 to 5 is how you survive. I ain't trying to survive. I'm trying to live it to the limit and love it alive. Thank you.